Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show. This is a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today's special guest has a very synonymous last name with Pennsylvania Dutch, where I'm from, Stacy Luckensmeyer. Stacy is a EOS Implementer, seasoned entrepreneur with more business ventures that she can easily list, and has a top secret, which I'm not going to reveal, that we'll probably share at some point. So stay tuned. You're going to want to know it. Stacy, how are you doing?
Thank you, Ross. So far, enjoying our conversation already.
I can say the same as well. Stacy, you've got a quite diverse background that's of interest. Let me ask you at first, what are some of the businesses you've started of the many that, it really got you to say, hey, I'm going to go all in on entrepreneurship? Like, what are some of the early ones?
Right. Yeah, the early ones are always the best stories. When I graduated college, I was a kindergarten teacher and I had never taken a business class. Didn't even know what the club was back in high school or college that would have connected to that, right? It was so off my radar. My husband was working in special ed. I taught kindergarten. And then he got sick. He got sick with what turned out to be a long-term illness. And I had to really quickly pivot. I couldn't, the school schedule wasn't going to work for us. And I had to keep a roof over our heads, pay the medical bills. So it was the very stereotypical, I think, in some ways. What are my skills? What can I do? And who might pay for that? I hadn't even gone next level yet to what problems could I solve for somebody, but it was the original, what is it that I can do? The first business that I started actually started with a partner. So we did bookkeeping originally. And then after a year, she said, this isn't really how I wanted it to be. And I said, well, is it okay if I keep it going? So I grew that business. I actually doubled revenue in that business over year after year for 10 years in a row. I know, right? It was tough. Kudos to my people, my employees.
Mm-hmm.
I had people that worked with me all the way through that ultimately, until I sold the business. I should have sold it at year 9. There was a large firm that was in discussions with me to buy it, but they wanted me to stay with them, double it one more time. And I remember sitting across the desk and saying, I don't think I can do that. I can't make that commitment. Ended up doubling it anyway on my own. And then here's the irony, Ross. It was too big to sell in one. I had to split the company in two and sell to two different buyers. So this was.
Yeah, but how could you have known at the time, right?
No, right? I could have known if I
2020.
had better planning advice, I would have known. I recommend honestly to my clients now, 10 years before you're planning your exit, you should be meeting with and choosing your exit strategy team. Because
Oh,
there's so much I could have learned and done differently and better. But it was still a really great ride. Um, that one spawned honestly the second business. I needed childcare, as did my people. So randomly started a private preschool at the same time and realized, hey, if other people's children are engaged in this and paying for this, then that covers the cost of what we need. So it was very successful. I had that for 9 years before sold that too.
that was a different business.
Yes, yeah. And then the third one that I started was different yet again. I had a sports nutrition supply company.
Well, what was the first industry? Can I ask? The first business, the one before the childcare?
Bookkeeping.
Oh yeah, bookkeeping. So bookkeeping, childcare, sports nutrition.
So yes, online. And that one, my tax attorney actually called me one day and wanted to buy that business for me. And this is another one of those I should have sold it.
Mm.
It was doing great, but it was shipping and receiving. And I could not stay passionate about shipping and receiving.
Oh, Stacy.
So ultimately, that
There's
was not
some
the
people
right.
that can,
I know, right?
but not my DNA either.
Nope, not mine. So, ultimately I ended up closing that one. The timing wasn't right when I was ready to sell it for my tax attorney. And yeah, it was just lessons learned. And I've had a few franchises since then. Those I've done, property investments and property management, that kind of thing. So, yeah. And now I'm an EOS implementer. I feel like this uses
Yeah.
everything I was supposed to be and everything that I've learned along the way, and I love it.
So, okay, you graduate college, you start out your career as a kindergarten teacher, and you're married at the time, like you're like newlyweds at this age?
Yes, yep. He got
Yeah.
back a few months after we got married.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. It's been a wild ride, Ross, and that's outside of the business stuff.
Well, I definitely want to ask you questions about the whole picture, but I really love, I've talked to so many entrepreneurs that have had the spectrum of starting, right? Some of them have had four co-founders sharing a one-bedroom flat where everyone had mattresses up on the floor and like just did anything they could to bootstrap it and get it off the ground. Some had successful exits, or they got to get funding from their current day job, and it was like that parachute where it was never looked at as risky. And then very few have had
Nope.
your type of origin story, which was, oh no, what am I like? I got to do something. And instead of saying woe is me and ruminating on all the negative, you said, let's get busy, let's get to work. And
Mhm.
kindergarten teaching and bookkeeping services, not the same thing, but like why what obviously I get your framework and your psychological stance of like you have to do something, but why
Right.
bookkeeping, and what did you learn in that industry?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, much more so than you know. Why bookkeeping? It really was because it was related initially to that partner that I had. That was a
Mm.
skill that she had developed from multiple companies that she also had owned, and she really enjoyed it. When we first started working together, she said, here, here's how this works. Let me teach you what I know. And then my role was to do the actual bookkeeping work. She was going to bring in new clients and do the growth, the business development growth on that side. So I had a lot of time under her tutelage and multiple companies to begin the work with so
Mm.
that I could learn these different corporate structures, how things had to be done differently. Just studied my tail off in every way that I could and asked all the questions. And I think that those abilities have served me well in every business going forward. That one, I did a lot of up through advising in that as I grew that business and grew the client base, it expanded the level of what I could do in my education, right? Had to pursue more of that all along the way. But what I learned from my clients, I mean, I have worked with well over 1,000 different companies in the different businesses that I've had and leadership teams, different individuals, the volume of information that I've learned from other people. That's, I think, honestly, a huge key to success for me.
Yeah, learning how to learn and really get along with others, because like you said, you had the business partner that was instrumental in the beginning.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the next business, which was the child care facility or service, kind of does make a little bit of sense with the kindergarten teaching, but like
Yeah.
totally different structure of a business. So you learn. So first thing, you learned what you needed to be the teacher, and you had some teaching experience, and that might have been what
Mhm.
your passion was growing up, or you always wanted to do. And then you learn the business and the financial side and the corporate structure. That makes a lot of sense, really, because as someone that has a daughter that's enrolled in daycare, and I do fractional CMO to some degree, it's like a form of business coaching a little bit. And I'm just like, man, you guys could do, some of the teachers there are great. Like, I don't know what I would do without you guys, like your daycare facility. I just really want to help daycare facilities, but you had that unique background. So how did it go the second time around? Did you have
Mhm.
recurring problems, or were there a totally new set of issues you had to solve?
Always a totally new set of issues to solve, always. But there are definitely commonalities, right? People hiring the right people for the right
Mm.
seat, and having a great culture in your organization is huge. And when you can blend those two things together, a huge measure of your success is created for you. by those people. And that's just one gift I've always had, is hiring fantastic individuals. When a business is smaller, often you hire people for their character and then do more training with them for skills, but they still have to have the aptitude for those types of skills, right? And one of my strengths is knowing who's going to fit what role well on a team and where your gaps and holes are, and being able to see an individual and know pretty early on, here's where their strengths are, here's where their weaknesses are, and know where the right fit will be. You've got a business to grow, but you also have people to grow at the same time. Yeah.
And there's a quote one of my mentors shared, is that we're all just 5-year-olds that got older.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, your experience with nurturing and growing that 5-year-old brain may have taken that quote might have been relevant to your business ventures.
Yes, and you have no idea how relevant. I'm laughing about that in particular because just this morning I was talking with my practice manager and I said the sentence, as adults, we are no different than kindergartners than we were back then, right? Yeah, we're just human at our core. And I've said that more than a few times with him. Yeah.
Yeah, quick story. The mentor that told me that, um, I grew up with his daughter, and we went through grade school, middle school, high school together. We stayed in touch since then. We're still close friends. And I said to her one time, I was like, it's crazy to me that she's very successful entrepreneur in her own right, as well. And we talk about business. It's like, it's crazy to me how much I always would have guessed that you'd be doing what you're doing. How, like, you're like the same person that I remember we were friends with back in elementary school. She goes, I'm not the same person. I'm totally different. This and that. I was like, in my head, I'm like, that's what that person would have said. Like, you're kind
Right.
of proving my point.
I'm not the same person. It is really critical that we grow, right? We
Sure.
have to take every challenge in front of us and we have to make sure that we come out a better person on the other side, and that we leave the world a better place on the other side of that too. But I think at our core, who we are in joy is the same, who we are in frustration is the same. I think there are key things that we get to work with as we grow.
Your GWC, I think that the capacity can change as we get new experiences and different stages in our life and learn new skills and things like that. I think that the C could be in flux, the capacity, but the G is typically thought of as like the part of our DNA.
Right, right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what were the signs that you said, hey, this is an affirmative thing? Like, we're going to go out and do this.
Right. Desperation is a fantastic teacher. Um, and I will say probably the core of my DNA is hope. I'm
Mm.
very good at hope. I have to maintain hope every minute of every day that I can take whatever this thing is in front of me and turn it into something amazing. I had to believe in that fully. There are so many mistakes I made in business because I was not able to separate hope from realism at some points because of that desperation factor. I had to
Mm.
believe the business would succeed, right? I had to be so tied to the hope that it would be fine. But so much so that sometimes I was a little blind to the things I needed to see and needed to learn. There's a balance there. And yet, at the same time, every entrepreneur has to have that faith and belief that it's going to work, that their vision is going to be successful, and they have to be 1,000% committed to it, because the days are going to be really challenging and you're going to be faced with a lot of points of failure that the weak hearted cannot make it through. Hope's a big deal.
And, two things. On the other side of that's grit, right? And I think, I've asked you a question offline, and it's very evident that you go look in the dictionary and you see the term grit, and they have a picture of Stacy next there. Um, for a
There is.
couple of reasons, but like they kind of go hand in hand. I think you're familiar with EOS library, duh, obviously, good to great.
Mhm.
Um, James Stockdale, Stoic philosopher, mentioned in
Mhm.
that book. Shout out to him. We had the same last name, grandfather's cousin. Never met him, wish I would have. But that whole theory of the Stockdale paradox is retain faith that you'll prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties, while at the same time confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. And it seems like that same duality of that quote and that paradox could be described for your journey as hope with grit. Like instead of white knuckling, like white chuckling, like white smiling.
Oh, yes. Yep. My mom and dad actually bought me a mug that says grin and ignore it because they said it fit my personality. No matter what the mess is, you just have to find the way, the place, to put a smile on your face and just keep going. And I think that resonates with the grit piece. The personal side of life for my husband and I was so much messier than the multiple businesses and all the crazy stakes and everything there, that was really where I earned my chops when it comes to grit. He is an overachiever in the level of illness, the level of symptoms, the level of complications that came with every step of the genetic issue that he has. There's a fault with one of his genes, right? Who knew? Nothing you can do about it. And just the way that unfolded for us, multiple hospitalizations, surgeries, organ removal, parts of organs, and an individual whose body was so sick that he couldn't heal, right? So really prone to infections. And we've had some really difficult moments where I've had my hands inside his abdomen trying to keep him alive, and where the hospitals have had to teach me some really, I would call, insane medical procedures that I had to do over and over and over with, on and in him. This is stuff most people don't even know exists, and that I kind of wish I didn't. Right?
But you're glad you do.
Well, because he's still with me. He's still with us, and it's a miracle. It wouldn't be any other way. And we've been married for almost for 30 years. We're celebrating our 30th year. And I'll be honest, there are some nights where we go to sleep and I am holding his hand, just breathing in and out, and we're still here,
Yeah.
Peace you try to hold sometimes when your brain is acknowledging the wild time you've been through, and yet at the same time holding it off just enough, right?
Right.
Yeah. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I don't think he'd say the same thing. It's been tougher on him, that's for sure.
Well, counting your blessings is really important. And the fact that you guys have made it this journey 30 years, even if everyone was healthy, there was not a day of sickness. That's still a rarity in today as well. 30 years of a healthy marriage, despite physical ailments, is kind of an impressive feat in and of itself. And it really, it makes me think that there's a whole new standard of people to live by when it comes to that commitment you made and how seriously you take it, come hell or high water, so to speak.
Right. That actually is a phrase that came from my husband just a couple of years ago. We were, that's a common phrase, right? But in application to me, it's one of the greatest compliments he ever paid me. We were trying to figure out how to move a very large and very old freezer out of my mother's basement that, was below grade. It was big and heavy and going to be a problem. And my husband looked at my mom and said, skinny over there isn't good for moving much except for hell and high water. And
that's actually a great compliment.
It is huge. Yes. Yep. And he believes it to his core. He's a very grateful man, and makes me feel every day how appreciated I am. And I think every woman would be lucky to get that.
Yeah, I was going to say, at the end of the day, it's easy for me to speak from a man's perspective of, what I think other men would want from a wife. And that's someone that would believe in them when they don't believe in themselves, right? That would offer to sleep with them under a bridge if it came to it. But from a woman's perspective, someone that, can give you that compliment that just, flowers are nice, jewelry's great, gifts great, fine. But just knowing the right words, the right meaning behind how to make someone feel appreciated and really mean it. I'm going to try and take that note from your husband on how to wordsmith appreciation. Because it sounds like he
Yeah.
did it in a.
Yes, he did. I saw you tear up a little bit on that one. Yeah, it was an April.
Oh, that's just allergies, Stacy. It had nothing to do with the very motivational story you told. Oh, it's allergies. Bugs in my eyes.
Got it noted. Oh.
If I can share a quick story that just kind of goes hand in hand. That story is reminiscent of during COVID. My mother, who sort of similar-ish in a lot of ways to the, her what she always wanted to do when she grew up was to drive school bus. And she had corporate jobs and she held it down and like worked her tail off for years and years, but she just loved kids so much. Loved driving the school bus. That was like her favorite thing in the world. And that's cool, right? She found something that she loved to do every day. And during COVID, it was weird because like school wasn't, it was disrupted for school. So um, they had to get the vaccine. She lost her sight after 2 weeks of getting the vaccine. She got one of the ones that was recalled, and it was just like a freak accident. Like, who knew, right? And she's going blind. And before that, my parents were, they were married for 35 years. 35 years. But, like, and then my father and her just became like the most, like, because of necessity, inseparable, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's just what the new reality was. And my mom goes, you know, I don't think I've ever appreciated your dad more than these last couple of years. And it's cool. I think that's what really marriage and relationships should be about, is if you make a commitment and you have shared values, that the hard times are a way to make it a tighter bond.
If you do it right, that is exactly what it's for, right? It's just unfortunately, it's tough to find people who've really done it right. We are
Mm,
not at our best. We are not at our best in those difficult and challenging moments, let alone when those moments drag out over long months or long years. It can be exhausting. And truly, what's our commitment to who we want to be as a person?
mm,
That that is more of the root at it than our commitment to that individual, right? It goes even deeper than that. What's our commitment to ourselves, who we are going to be? And that should apply to all the other people around us, right? I have to look at myself in the mirror every day. And there were a lot of moments where I had to look at myself and consider whether dealing with a business situation, that time where I had to pour out my husband's piggy bank to make payroll, right? Every great entrepreneur has that story. Everyone. And it's embarrassing at the time, mortifying. You're angry with yourself,
right.
but who are you going to be? I'm going to be the person that pours the last penny that I have to make in my payroll for my people and to advance this so I never am in that spot again. And then personally as well, regardless of the stress and pain and problem that you're going through with your partner or your family member or your best friend at that point in time, what are you going to do to make that situation the best it possibly can? And then what do you need to do to make sure you're not back in that same spot again?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, they say the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. And everyone experiences trials, tribulations, and tough times. But I think the point you made was having that awareness of reflection to, what did we learn, right? Don't forget the lesson in this struggle.
Mm.
And like, how do we make sure we don't do it again? And I think if someone listening, if you take an actionable to do, is maybe if someone were to write down, okay, what are some of the bad, like, we love to celebrate, a lot of people love to celebrate wins, or, a lot of business love to just keep striving for more and more and more. But like, how do we celebrate lessons? Like, what are the things that we maybe came up short and why? And then what can we do next quarter, next year to not? That's a helpful frame.
Yeah. And to just keep getting up,
Mm,
to keep getting up and getting up to it. There's there's this really awesome quote that I've seen online multiple places, right, about hope. And I keep it on my phone, of course. And it says, people speak of hope, as if it is this delicate, ephemeral thing made of whispers and spider webs. It's not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, the grit of the cobblestones in her hair, and just spat out a tooth as she rises for another go. And that one, every time I read it, it makes my heart pump harder. And I think that is the ultimate combination of hope and grit together. And
It
that
sounds like a really awesome quote.
it is, right? Yeah.
I haven't heard it before, but I really love it, and I'm glad we're on the record. So it'll be.
I will send it to you afterwards, my friend. I will. Yeah. That is what changes us. That is what changes the world when we have hope in what can be and we're willing to do the work on that level to make it so.
Mm. So I wanna hold on to that thought. I want to keep that on top of mind. You've successfully started and sold and done, learned a lot of lessons along the way, and you're still married. What are in EOS they call it the BHAG goal, right? But when you've been doing it for 30 years, that's the 10-year goal that changes iterations. How have those BHAGs been set and iterated over time? That's how I want to ask the question.
Yeah, okay. So I will tell you honestly that I was terrible with goal setting in my businesses early on. And I mean, I never even had a written plan. Never. Nope. Was not early on using EOS in any way, shape, or form. I didn't know about it with my first few businesses, right? Wasn't even on my radar. And the BHAG that I had at that point in time was probably just make it through another day a little bit better than I did this day. And it served me well for a number of years.
Huh.
Very true. Yeah. I don't recommend that. And obviously, the work that I do as an implementer is completely contrary to that.
But in the beginning, it's what served you well.
Yes, in the beginning, it's what served me well. Yeah. And I think the what served me well statement there, as I'm hearing that, I heard you say that back to me. I'm like, maybe that was the BHAG. Every day, no matter what was going on, what is the mindset that serves me well right now? What are the characteristics I need to be displaying in this moment that serves me well and the other people that I'm trying to serve?
Man.
There were many mindful, I mean, daily, a lot of times when I went to bed and then again when I got up, right? Thinking about what the perspective I needed to adopt, the approach I needed to use to try and turn whatever it was into a great outcome. And that serves me well. So many of the choices we make in life don't serve us well.
Correct?
Yep. And they don't serve
Correct?
other people. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And it takes some premeditative thinking to look ahead. This action right now, that may feel good in this moment, but is it going to serve me well for tomorrow and the ripple effect impact that that might have?
Right. And does it
Just,
serve my people well also? Right. Because you always had that family, how can I do this to, help out my husband? And how can I do this to help out my payroll, my team that I'm responsible
yeah,
for?
my team. I love, love, love to this day, love the people that worked with me and
Mm.
that worked for me. Some of my closest friendships and relationships are those people that went through a lot of that with me.
There's this quote that I want to share with you, and it's like rule number one of entrepreneurship. And it's probably been a different author than this author, but Alex Ramosi is the one who's saying it in my ear now. And he says, rule number one of entrepreneurship is use what you got. So if you got pain, you got desperation, you got hard times, freaking use it. And your story is like exhibit A of that. And and the quote that I want to eviscerate on this conversation is follow your passion. It's like, I don't know, if someone can follow their passion, good, knock yourself out. That's awesome. Like, please do that. But so many people I know that have achieved awesome things and have just become great people that I would aspire to be more like, they weren't thinking about sunshine and rainbows at the very beginning. They were thinking about, how do I slay the dragon that's like breathing hot fire right in my face? And
Yeah.
I think you're the latter, right? You were motivated intentionally about, how do I survive this boss fight? And anyway, so I just want to share that with you.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I actually wrote it down. Use what you've got. The passion part. Sometimes you don't get to choose your own passion. Sometimes the world has a passion for you in one area or another. And yeah, using what you've got, that's all we have every day, right? How did we use it? And I think about this often enough. If the creator was looking at me saying, with everything that I gave you, this is all you did with it, I don't ever want that. I want the wow, look what you did with it.
And if the worst case scenario is you get a pretty badass story to tell.
Yeah, yeah. I look sweet and innocent, Ross, but man, I tell you, there is a lot more muscle and strength underneath than someone would think, right? Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it
that's
takes a lot more than muscle to move hell and high water.
yes, yeah, that it does.
So then let's go on. I don't want to say necessarily the bright side, but probably you then is eventually from the let's survive the day to day and let's grow these businesses because we have to. Got to a place where you became familiar with EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, and when was that introduction to you, and how did it enter your world?
Right. I had sold a few companies in a row, and the Washington State Department of Commerce sent me out to Chicago and Detroit area to look at an entrepreneurship program that they were considering bringing back to Washington, something they wanted to use legislative funding for, and that would help scale second stage companies, right? EOS was not what they were looking at, but when I went back there, I kept hearing about it. So I thought, well, you know what? There's some reason why people are talking about this. What is it? And started asking the questions, learning about it, got the book, and went, this is the real deal. This is the thing that every business owner needs to be able to grow and scale. It wasn't the way the business model works for EOS as an implementer, for example. That's not how the legislative dollars could be used. So the state did do something different, but that was the book I passed out like candy. That was the thing I recommended to so many entrepreneurs. When I finally found out that there was such a thing as an EOS implementer, I knew that was what I wanted to do. Yeah,
Huh.
I had some projects that I wanted to see through and forward. Some other big things. Regional Center for Entrepreneurship was one of them that I was working on at the time. But this was the path. I wanted to help as many business owners as possible run a really great company, make their business more manageable and scalable and just more fun to run. Because it wasn't always that way for me. And it's proven true. It's been fantastic.
So you went from becoming aware of EOS to reading the book to sharing the book and telling as many people as possible, and then
Yeah.
learning that that was a thing that you could do for others as like a path.
Yes.
Then you jumped in because a lot of people I talk to, it starts with like an implementer. Like they might have owned a business, had an implementer, and be like, oh, I kind of want to do that. But you're like, you know, you learned all the lessons. I don't want to say the hard way, but through the school of hard knocks, kind of the hard way. And then you recognize that there was a system that could potentially ameliorate or expedite the pain from others, and you're like, all right, I'm doing this. That's cool.
Yep. The key components to running a really great business are all they're in there. Yep.
Yeah.
And just being able to put them all together in a clear and concise way. And then when you work with an implementer, they're helping train your leadership team on all of that. And that really allows you to literally gain traction. That's the name of Gino's first book. You
Mm-hmm.
gain traction faster. Yeah. Yeah. The momentum that you get from that because you're all on the same page, rowing in the same direction. It just makes sense. Yeah. It just makes sense from a real practical perspective, which I have a lot of.
That is for sure. No one's arguing with you there on that one. What are what are some of the things as an EOS implementer that you help businesses through that are what I want to call I don't want to say the one big challenge, but the recurring challenges that you can really help identify and dissect and solve for businesses that through your EOS implementation process. Like, what are some of the ones that are unknown issues that you uncover?
Mm-hmm. Pretty consistently, rate people, rate seat issues are big. Um, and how to bravely, as a leader, whether you're at C-suite level leadership or mid-level management leadership, how to bravely acknowledge that you have an issue. The person, they may fit your culture and be the right person, but they may not GWC that seat, right? uh, and permission and the tools that you need to acknowledge it fast, address it fast, and make a determination quickly before you're costing your business a whole lot of money. And you can invest in training for someone that's never going to get much out of that training if they're not oriented right for that role. And the recognition that, if they're not fully owning their seat and performing, they know it. And I commonly use the phrase, you have to decide to liberate that person back to the marketplace. And
Right.
that's bi-directional. They may be hostage to the paycheck they get from you. They know they're not performing. They're not happy. And the longer we keep them unhappy, more unhappy we will be. So you take care of your business while you take care of that person. But we have typically not been given a lot of training on how to identify and address and work with someone through and to an exit when it's necessary.
It it reminds me of this question. And you're absolutely a loyal person as part of your DNA, your value framework. But when does loyalty to your people become disloyalty? Like
Yeah.
that's like a line that is tough for business owners to identify, right? Because
Yeah.
maybe they love the person so much, but like the, the analogy between if you appreciate a flower, the best thing you can do is water it, nurture it, see it grow, but don't pick it or don't grab it and squeeze it, or don't
Mm-hmm.
keep it in a box away from the sunlight. And I don't know if that gardening analogy makes sense, but to me, you kind of got to let people be their nature, and it's tough to know when loyalty and disloyalty are you're on the cusp of.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the holding them in a seat where they're not going to be successful is definitely the one aspect of that. The other aspect of that, when you have a real high performer in a role and then you promote them to a next level role that may actually not be the right fit for their skills and abilities, advancing people in the wrong way or without the proper supports. You've done it because you believe in them. That looks like loyalty to the next succession for that person, but it actually can be really harmful. And you've done them no favors. And there's not always a way back to where they were their most successful self too. We're truly messing with people's lives.
Mm.
The benefit to the business has to be first and foremost, or you don't have a business to employ everyone, right? But tying that to really the best growth for somebody, where it really is in your organization, where it isn't, and sometimes helping them grow in another organization, getting them there is the best gift you can give them. So there can be a rub on both sides.
Mm. Yeah, there's another idea that I think we've kind of danced around, but we haven't gotten really touched on is, now that we've talked about what it's like to be in survival mode and make it to the next day, and then a lot of EOS, there's goal setting. So there's your rocks. Like, what are our 90-day goals? What's our 1 year picture? What's our goal for the 1 year? What's our 3 year? Look ahead. What's our BHAG goal? But like, how I want to phrase this. So I have nothing wrong with people pursuing money. I think money is a great tool. It's helpful. It can amplify your life. It can make you more of who you are. But I think a recurring thing with goal setting that is interesting is when people talk about a business that's in the growth stage and they say, I'm going to get a private jet, or they say, I'm going to, go on vacation every week, every month of every year. Like, I'm going to go live my life on the beach in Cabo forever.
Mhm.
Like, That's cool, but why? So one of the questions I have for you is, or rather, it's a statement I think that you share with me off camera. Is there's always someone with a bigger jet. So, like, how do you guide and help with the goal setting, both with clients and in your own business and practice?
The world is coming at us every second of every day with messaging, right?
Mm-hmm.
From what's dinging on my phone right now in the background, to when we turn on any kind of a media device and all the messaging there. What we are told, this is what the vision of success looks like. Um, and a lot of times that is going to be discordant with who we really are. And the unclear picture of what we want versus what we think we're supposed to want, those two things are really hard to separate.
Mm.
Personal example, recently my husband and I sold almost everything that we own. We sold property, we sold furniture, we hired an estate sale company. They came and sold even the silverware, right? Just gone. Yeah. We pretty radical commitment to what do we want? And we realized, we are spending a lot of time taking care of things
Mm.
and not getting to spend the time we want taking care of and with our people. And our home was filled with memories. The photos on the wall, the tchotchkes on a shelf, those all had meaning and were tied and connected to those important moments in our lives. And as we were going through the decision making process to actually let it all go, it was the thought that hit me one morning was those things remind me of really important moments with these people. But when I'm with my people, that reminds me of those moments too. And I want more of
Mm.
the time with my people. So we boldly let it all go. I am sitting in a furnished apartment, somebody else's stuff, right? Don't know how long we will hold on to this. But the recognition in that, yeah, there's always somebody with more, no matter how successful you are. There's always a new innovation coming. You will never have the best iPhone because there's another one rolling forward. So, what is it that you actually want?
Mm.
And that is it's an easy question to ask, and many people I think find it an easy question to answer. But I bet their answer is probably not in alignment with who they really are. And when entrepreneurs are setting goals, when their teams are looking at what they want to accomplish with the business, I like the side conversation with the owner as well. What's your long-term play? Where do you
Right.
actually really want to be and when and why? Because if you're going to exit in your company, you better be planning that 10 years in advance. Um, there's so many different strategies and things to consider, but it does come down to what do you want? Forget everybody else. There's no competition for what you want in life. Get clear on what it is and let go of everything else.
Yeah, there's this author from Washington State, Chuck Palahniuk,
Mhm.
and he writes a quote that says, sometimes the things you own end up owning you. And, what you did was basically like a middle finger to that quote. You're like, nope, I'm owning my life. This relation, who I want to be matters more than these things. Well, they have meaning. I can't wrap my identity within the material world of, all of the possessions and ownership of things. And you really just flip that logic on its head. And it's like, who you want to be owns your values and your decision making, which like I don't think you can go wrong when you have that sort of value driven approach to goal setting. And sure, material things, great, they serve a great purpose, but it's sort of like the loyalty versus disloyalty thing. It's like when the cost outweighs the benefit of the material thing, you got to know when to let go.
Mhm.
That's cool.
Yep. And I love his quote, but I would argue with the word sometimes. I would say every time, always, what you
Mm.
own owns you. Yeah. Yep. And I remember saying to my husband once, well, if you own it, you have to take care of it. Do we really want to buy that and have to take care of that? That was, I
Mm.
think, the beginning of some realizations. Now, it did take us months of crying and
Sure.
sorting through, to really get firm with the letting it go part. But, it freed me up, not just for my family time, but for time with my clients.
Right.
I have brain space for all of them in spades and more.
Yep.
And that feels good. I get to really have conversations, real conversations, be fully present, and spend the time growing my practice, helping their teams and their businesses grow, as well as dealing with my family. It's a huge win.
Oh, man. Well, when you think about it, it's sort of another analogy for the benefit of EOS, like why people reach out to you as an implementer is like, hey, I feel like instead of owning my business owns me. And maybe they feel like they're drowning underneath the weight of it and that, they're not getting the benefit of living the American dream or the benefit of freedom, really, to do what they want to do with their time here on Earth. And it sounds like what your unique perspective and your story can do is give people hope. And so far as like, look, you can get a grip on your business and it doesn't have to rule your life. And when you own your seat in the accountability chart, you don't have to think that you are every seat in the accountability chart, which many founder owner operators, whether it's by necessity or by habit or because when the beginning they had no employees, they may insert themselves in every seat because only they can do it. And then there's tools for that with EOS, like obviously delegate and elevate, accountability chart. We could name all the tools, but really, what's the purpose of the tool? Is so that the owner can get unstuck from being in every responsibility, that feeling of dread, that the whole business on their shoulders. No, sit in your integrator seat, sit in your visionary seat, or if you love doing the work, hire someone to be the visionary integrator and go do production. You might
Yeah.
still own it, but at least be honest with me, you being you, the implementer, and say, what is it you really want to do? And then playing around that, right?
Right. That particular seat in particular, the owner, the visionary, the founder, what do you really want from your business? That's the
Yeah.
one seat that's completely customized to them for what it is that they want, and the rest of the plan has to come. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you another question. I did make a promise at the beginning of the video, so I have to keep my word.
Okay.
And but it does go in the visionary seat. It does apply to this EOS topic, and it's the the BHAG goal that you and your husband may have that is currently a secret, but it could be an industry disruptor. It's like,
Yeah.
what's one challenge if you saw would make a significant impact that would be fun, or
Hmm.
don't spill the secret sauce, but like give us a teaser.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I told you earlier, I think the waffle and pancake syrup industry is ripe for disruption. There hasn't been a major evolution in that for a long, long time. And I mean, a long, long time. My husband has this syrup recipe. The teaser is that it's an incredible syrup recipe. It's one of the best things I've ever tasted. And I am a little determined that we need to introduce that to the market at some point in time. I'm not super strong from my background with businesses in product based. And I also have never started a company using EOS from the beginning.
Mm.
And I'm like, this could bring together some of my favorite loves and something that I think would impact the world in a completely new way. And I'm very intrigued by the prospect of it. So, if you see something changing in the landscape of syrups, just know I'm probably at the root of that.
Well, I can make this comment because I know you much better than I did before this conversation. But if anyone knows your husband's digestive tract better than you, I would be shocked. Okay, so do what you know.
Nailed it. That's hilarious. Well played. That is great.
So, use what you got. You have that intimate knowledge that no one else can replicate, and it's telling you something. Maybe
Yeah.
follow the signs. That's the key to success.
Yes, yep. And I've got EOS in my back pocket. I mean, in and out, through and through. I live and breathe it. And yeah, it would be an absolute pleasure, I think, to start and run a company from the ground up with that. Yeah.
Well, I will switch over to syrup when I see it on the shelves. That if it has the Luckensmeyer name on it or doesn't, just let me know which one it is at some point. I'll switch to it. Speaking of looking out for Stacy, where can people find you to connect and follow you and your journey and just get in touch?
Yeah, I'm a little light on the social presence out there. I much prefer in person and real time with human beings. So you won't find me on social media, but you can find me on LinkedIn. And one of the great things about a very unique name, Luckensmeyer, there's only one Stacy Luckensmeyer in the entire world. So if you Google that or type it into LinkedIn, you will absolutely find me. The irony of our name is that it is spelled Luck, the first four letters. It's pronounced Luckensmeyer, but it's spelled Luckensmeyer. And my husband and I have laughed so many times because we have not felt the greatest of luck for the majority of our lives. But ultimately, it's destined for us some way, somehow, because it's in the name.
Love that. I don't believe in coincidences, but I do believe in Stacy, and I do believe that luck will be in your future.
Thank
For
you.
those that are listening, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. If you did, I don't run ads on the show. I don't plan to. My ask is that you share it with a friend. That would mean the world to me. Stacy, thank you.
You, Ross.